Today you are going to learn manual exposure and become a king of camera settings. Let's get into it. Hi, my name is Urban Anja, and this is Photography 101, the free and open photography course for all beginners. Welcome. Why shooting manual? Well, it's interesting. You get creative control. It's educational. You learn more about photography and your camera. You get more consistent results. And for some types of photography, it's a necessity. But why not? Well, at least in the beginning it will be slower. You need more time to think. It could be a good idea because then you also get more time for your subject and thoughts about what you're shooting. But it could be a problem sometimes. And light changes. The sun comes behind the cloud, or you get into the shadow and so on. And then you have to change the settings. Sometimes it could be too stressful. So sometimes it might be better to use some automatics. Maybe not the full automatic, but aperture priority or shutter priority. And of course, when learning, you will sometimes do something wrong. But to err is a way to learn. When you begin shooting something or somewhere, you need some situation awareness. You need to have an opinion of the light. You get yourself an overview of a location. And what's your intention? What sort of pictures are you going to take here and now? And what kit have you brought? Okay, into that exposure thing. You have got your aperture, that's the opening in the lens. You have got the shutter and the shutter speed, and you have got ISO, which is sort of an amplification. And you need to get them in some sort of balance. You need to expose correctly. You don't want overexposed pictures and you don't want underexposed. To your help you have an exposure meter, and if you have too much light you will see a tall bar up in the plus region, and it may point to a negative value. Then you are underexposed. You need to get it to the zero to get a proper exposure. But exposure isn't just about enough light. With the aperture you control depth of field. If you want a blurry background, or if you want most of the picture to become sharp. And it's about controlling the image quality. The lens does its best job at its sweet spot. So if you're into maximum technical quality, we will try to use the lens at the sweet spot. And you're working with movement. Sometimes you shoot stuff that moves, and you have to choose if you freeze that movement or if you want to show it in the picture. And if you're hand holding your camera, you need to avoid camera shake. So you need a decently fast shutter speed to avoid camera shake. And even ISO has its drawbacks. You get noise if you turn it up too much, and you can avoid most of the noise by using the base ISO value. All those values comes in stops, and some of those stops works better in low light conditions and some of them needs much light to work. So all of them might not be useful for every picture. Let's take an example. You're shooting indoors in a fairly well lit location, and you get the proper exposure with ISO 400 and 30th of a second and the aperture on 2.8. But you get some camera shake, or at least you are afraid of getting camera shake. So you want a faster shutter speed. Well, you turn the shutter speed to 125. That's 1/125 seconds. Sometimes you can choose to open up the aperture. You may have a lens with 1.4 or 2.0, but in this case 2.8 is wide open for that lens. So you cannot change the aperture, but you can change the ISO settings. If you set it to 1600, then you're good. Then you have your proper exposure again. You need to be aware of what you're measuring light against. Preferably you got a gray card. It reflects 18% of the light, and it's what the meter is set to work with. But a dry, worn out asphalt road is quite okay. The inside of your hand works too. Green grass or a blue sky. You shouldn't measure against black stuff because the meter tries to make them gray. And in the same way, if you're measuring against light sources or white stuff, bright against a white church wall, you will get them gray. You can also make test images and check out the histogram. And there shouldn't be, if you've got a mountain to the right, that's too much light that the sensor cannot handle. If you get a mountain to the left, too much darkness, that also the sensor cannot handle. You will need to have it more or less to the middle, at least not climbing on the walls. If you got an old analog camera, you may not have a meter. Then you can try the Sunny 16 roll. That's if you turn the aperture to 16. Can use about the same number for ISO than for shutter speed. So if you have ISO 200, you set the shutter on 200. But it works in the middle of a sunny summer day. And be aware that light changes during the day, and when you walk around you will get into the shadows or in the sunny place. And think about your intention. What are you trying to say with your image? Do you want to have a blurry background, or do you want to have sharpness in the whole picture? Have you got something moving? What do you want to do with that? And some of those intentions make you choose aperture, and some of them points more to what shutter speed you should choose. And how about ISO? Sometimes you can set it first out of the lighting situation. A sunny day outside, set it to base ISO. If it's overcast, set it to 400 or maybe 800 if it's really dark. Well lit places indoors, put it on maybe 1600. And if it's darker than that, maybe 3200 or probably more. So guesstimate the light. Let's say you make an active choice of setting the base ISO and also an active choice of choosing f8. Then measure the light or take a test shot and do a reality check. And you find out, oh, well, that's a little bit too hot. So you correct it and take your shot. And you're indoors in an office or something. You may need to shoot wide open, at least that if you have a lens that isn't better than 2.8. And you're trying to have a shutter speed of at least 125 or 1/125. What will be your ISO? In a pinch you can use longer shutter speeds than 125, but I think 125 is a decent beginner-friendly. What are the settings for a wedding? You can see questions like that often in forums and Facebook groups. I don't think you have really understood the problem then, because weddings can be indoors and outdoors. I've shot a wedding on a sunny beach in the middle of the day, and I've shot wedding parties in dark environments. So there is nothing common. On a wedding you shoot many different kinds of pictures, portraits, groups, overviews, part and mingle, details. You use wide angle and telephoto. Sometimes you use a flash, and you want short depth of field on some pictures and longer on others. So you will probably use them all, more or less. Well, sometimes you find it too dark. What can you do? Sometimes you have to find the light switch or walk away to a window. Could solve your problem. And of course you can add more light with flashes and strobes and speed lights or whatever you call it. You can use a tripod to get less movement. And of course sometimes it's good to have a fast lens. If you've got too much light, you may not be able to use the aperture you want to use, for example. Then you can use a gray filter or a neutral density filter. Okay, now I think you can manage to at least try shooting manually. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.